5 times in the Bible, someone dies and comes back. A widow's only son, a little girl, 12 years old, a man 4 days in the tomb, already decaying. Every time, the text tells us they returned. Not once does it tell us what they saw. 2,000 years of tradition have tried to fill that silence. Visions of fire, visions of light, claims of hell itself described in vivid, terrifying detail. But strip away the tradition. Go back to the original text. The silence is total. Today we open 5 graves the Bible closed. Too quickly to explain. Resurrection is not rare in the biblical record. It happens at least 5 times, across nearly 1,000 years, under 3 different miracle workers, and each account follows the same strange shape. Someone dies. Someone with power intervenes. The dead rise. Life continues. What never continues is the story. The person who died never speaks of it. Not one word about where they went, what they felt, or what, if anything, they saw on the other side. For a book this detailed about genealogies, laws, and battles, the silence around the one experience every human being will eventually have is almost deliberate. So we're going to look at all 5 in order and ask the question the text itself refuses to answer. The first case is the widow of Zarephath. Her only son falls ill and stops breathing. She turns on the prophet Elijah, staying in her house, and accuses him of coming only to bring death into her home. Elijah carries the boy upstairs, stretches himself over the body 3 times, and cries out to God. The boy's life returns. Elijah carries him back down and says only, "See, your son lives." That's it. 1 Kings chapter 17. Not a single line from the boy about the space between. 2 prophets later. The pattern repeats almost exactly. A Shunammite woman's son collapses in the field, dies in her arms. She sends for Elisha. He lies over the child's body, eyes to eyes, hands to hands, and the boy sneezes 7 times and opens his eyes. 2 Kings chapter 4. 2 resurrections, 2 prophets, 2 silences. Already a pattern is forming, one the rest of the Bible will not break. Move forward to the Gospels, and the pattern doesn't just continue, it intensifies. Outside the town of Nain, Jesus meets a funeral procession, a widow burying her only son. He touches the coffin. The bearers stop. The young man sits up and begins to speak. Luke tells us he speaks, but not once does Luke tell us what he says about where he had been. Then comes Jairus' daughter, 12 years old, already pronounced dead, mourners already wailing outside the house. Jesus takes her hand. 2 words in Aramaic, preserved in the original text, Talitha cum. Little girl, get up. She rises immediately and walks. Mark's gospel is famous for including small human details, and yet here, at the most human moment imaginable, it includes nothing about what she experienced. And then, the case that should have broken the pattern completely, Lazarus. 4 days in the tomb, not resuscitated, decayed. His sister Martha warns Jesus there will already be a smell. Jesus weeps. He calls Lazarus by name, and a dead man walks out, still wrapped in burial cloth. John's Gospel is the most theological, the most reflective of the four. It spends an entire chapter, the longest resurrection narrative in the Bible, on this one event. And it tells us absolutely nothing about the 4 days in between. Early church writers noticed this gap. Some speculated Lazarus never spoke of it because he was forbidden to. Others claimed he never smiled again for the rest of his life. None of it comes from the text. All of it comes from people trying to answer a question Scripture leaves open. The pattern doesn't stop with Jesus. It continues into the early church. In the book of Acts, Peter raises a woman named Tabitha, known for her charity, in the town of Joppa. In Troas, a young man named Eutychus falls asleep during a long sermon, drops from a third-story window, and is picked up for dead, until Paul embraces him and declares he is alive. Same shape, same silence. Even the apostles' own resurrections carry no testimony from the returned. By this point, one thing is clear. This isn't an accident of storytelling. It's a consistent editorial choice across multiple authors, multiple centuries, multiple languages. So where did our modern image of near-death visions, tunnels of light, rivers of fire, judgment scenes, actually come from? Not from these 5 accounts. They came later. Centuries later, texts began circulating that claimed to describe exactly what canonical scripture left out. Visionary journeys through the afterlife, attributed to apostles and prophets, full of vivid, specific imagery of punishment and reward. These texts were never part of the accepted biblical canon, but they spread widely, shaped centuries of Christian art, and eventually became so influential that most people today assume their imagery came from the Bible itself. It didn't. It came from the silence. And silence, it turns out, is something people cannot leave alone. We've now traced this pattern across the whole series. A name removed from a book everyone assumed was complete. A traitor turned into something closer to a hero, depending on who was reading. A woman scholars still argue was never meant to be a demon at all. A mark meant as protection, twisted for centuries into justification for cruelty. And now, 5 resurrections, and a silence so consistent it can't be coincidence, filled again and again by people who couldn't accept that the text simply stopped. That is the real through line of TEHOM. Not what the text says, what we needed it to say. Next time we go to a story most people think they already know, a city, and a judgment so infamous it became a synonym for sin itself. But what does the text actually say happened at Sodom? Not what centuries of sermons claimed. What's actually written? Subscribe and we'll open that one next.